You said, and I'm quoting you now, the FBI uses all tools available at its disposal to combat domestic terrorism, which now apparently includes the crime of being Catholic. Let's talk a little bit about the FBI's egregious targeting of Catholic Americans.
Today, we're diving into a tense and deeply concerning exchange between Senator Josh Hawley and FBI Director Christopher Wray over an FBI memo that has come under intense scrutiny. This document allegedly recommended monitoring and even recruiting Catholic Church members as informants. Senator Hawley isn't holding back, and he's challenging Director Wray on what many see as blatant targeting of religious individuals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, thank you for being here. I noticed with interest in your written testimony that you said, and I'm quoting you now, the FBI uses all tools available at its disposal to combat domestic terrorism, which now apparently includes the crime of being Catholic. Let's talk a little bit about the FBI's egregious targeting of Catholic Americans. You have repeatedly been asked about the memo generated by the Richmond field office, we now know in collaboration with multiple other field offices, about recruiting sources in Catholic churches. You have repeatedly said that no human sources were approached. This is you on July the 12th in the House. You were asked directly by Jim Jordan, do you think that priests ought to be approached to give information on parishioners? You said, no, sir, no, sir. You went on to say, we do not recruit, open, or operate human sources. We do not report on religious organizations. You went on to say, this product, meaning the Richmond memo, has not resulted in any investigative action. But now we know that, in fact, FBI agents did approach a priest and a choir director to ask them to inform on parishioners. So were you lied to when you gave this testimony, or were you lying to Congress?
Neither. So your question conflates two different things. There's the intelligence product itself, which the Richmond field office created. It was written by, as our inspection found, by analysts in Richmond, reviewed by people in Richmond, and captioned Richmond field office product. Separately from that, there was an investigation of a specific individual who was amassing Molotov cocktails and posting about killing people, and it does not surprise me that there were people who knew that subject in that investigation, that is the guy building the Molotov cocktails and trying to kill people, that people talked to the witnesses who knew that person, and I think the product, the Richmond intelligence product, which cites that investigation, is actually pretty transparent about exactly what I just said.
No, I don't think so at all. In fact, the only reason we know this is a whistleblower has come forward and told the House under oath that the FBI went and interviewed priests and choir directors in the Richmond area. The House goes on to say that the FBI has repeatedly refused to disclose this information. The only reason we know it is because a whistleblower came forward with it. Just like the only reason we know about this memo is because a whistleblower came forward with it. How many other parishes around the country have priests or choir directors been approached? By the way, are Catholic choirs now?
Let's break down what happened in this heated Senate exchange. The issue began when a whistleblower revealed an FBI memo from the Richmond field office suggesting that agents should reach out to Catholic churches. Specifically, it suggested they recruit sources among church leadership to help investigate what the memo called racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists associated with traditionalist Catholic ideology. Now, this revelation stirred up a huge backlash. And today, we're focusing on how Senator Hawley pressed Director Wray on this very subject, accusing the FBI of targeting people solely based on their faith. Senator Hawley wasted no time. He referenced Wray's previous statements where Wray claimed that the FBI does not target religious organizations or individuals for their beliefs. Hawley then pointed out that, according to a whistleblower, the FBI did approach a Catholic priest and a choir director, asking them to inform on parishioners. So Hawley's question was direct. If the FBI isn't targeting churches, then why were agents allegedly recruiting informants within Catholic congregations? Senator Hawley didn't hold back. He made it clear that he believes this memo and the lack of accountability afterward reflect a troubling culture within the FBI. He stated that if the agency continues down this path, it risks losing the trust of the American people. He even accused Wray of violating the spirit of the First Amendment, which protects religious freedom. Ray tried to defend the FBI, reiterating that they are committed to protecting constitutional rights, but Hawley had the final word, reminding Ray and the committee that without real accountability, these statements mean very little. A heated confrontation that's raising serious questions about government oversight and privacy in the United States. Senator Hawley's frustration echoes a sentiment that many Americans share. There should be no place for religious targeting in federal investigations. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the FBI overstepped here? Should there be more accountability? And don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth analysis on current events. Stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll see you in the next one.
Ms. Pacheco, if I could just start with you. Your organization, the Dream.us, you provide support for undocumented young people for college and career success. Is that broadly right? Am I getting it right?
That's correct.
And among the things you do is you provide scholarships to these undocumented students. Have I got that correct?
That's right.
And so college scholarships, just to be clear.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Can you tell me, maybe you know the answer to this, maybe you don't, any of the students, do you know if any of the students to whom your organization has provided a college scholarship are currently part of the encampments on any of these college campuses, like the picture you see behind me? I'm sure we've all seen these videos.
No, Senator.
Nobody to whom you provide scholarships are part of the encampments?
I do not know.
Oh, you don't know.
Today, we're diving into an intense and controversial Senate exchange that's sparking debates all over the country. Senator Josh Hawley, known for his bold and direct style, just went off in a hearing about recent student protests that have escalated into shocking calls for violence and anti-Semitic actions on university campuses. He argues that undocumented students involved in these protests should face immediate deportation.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all of the witnesses for being here. Ms. Pacheco, if I could just start with you. Your organization, the Dream.us, you provide support for undocumented young people for college and career success. Is that broadly right? Am I getting it right?
That's correct.
And among the things you do is you provide scholarships to these undocumented students. Have I got that correct?
That's right.
And so college scholarships, just to be clear.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Can you tell me, maybe you know the answer to this, maybe you don't, any of the students, do you know if any of the students to whom your organization has provided a college scholarship are currently part of the encampments on any of these college campuses, like the picture you see behind me? I'm sure we've all seen these videos.
No, Senator.
Nobody to whom you provide scholarships are part of the encampments?
I do not know.
Oh, you don't know. What about, do you know if any of the students to whom you provided scholarships have physically threatened Jewish students on campus?
I do not know.
Here's why I'm asking. NBC News just reported, and I'm just going to quote now from the article, quote, this is Columbia University, a Columbia undergraduate who provided only her initials because she is an undocumented immigrant and fears deportation, said last week she spent hours a day in the encampment. This would be the illegal encampment that's in violation of the law as well as campus policy. Spent hours a day in the encampment, I'm quoting still now, before university officials threatened to suspend those students. The article goes on, she joined, this student, joined a supplies platoon. That's a subgroup formed by pro-Palestinian campus organizers, end quote. Let me just review some of the things that these students, these in the encampments that is, are saying. And of course, we often don't know who these students are. They're concealing their identities. This is, I'm going to read to you now, and I just warn folks, this is not pleasant stuff, but these are the facts, and we have to tell the truth. This is just from last night at George Washington University. That's here in this town. They projected, the students in the encampment there projected onto various buildings images of the United States flag being burned with the graphics, Gaza lights the spark that will set the empire ablaze. They projected the following: long live the student intifada, down with the settler state, that would be the state of Israel, I suppose. Glory to the martyrs of Palestine, it's a jihadist slogan. Stained with the blood of 44,000 Palestinians. That's last night at GW. Also at GW, they're now calling for beheading, the student encampment, beheading of individuals who support the state of Israel, including holding a people's tribunal where they're putting on trial, quote unquote, various members of their own board of trustees and calling for a guillotine. Here's Columbia University students on April the 20th, 2024. This is all public record. I'm reading this now. This is on, I guess it's X.
This hearing was eye-opening, and we're breaking down all the explosive moments, what's at stake, and what it could mean for free speech and safety on campus. Senator Hawley is calling for action. Across the U.S., certain college campuses have recently seen intense demonstrations where students have reportedly projected images of burning U.S. flags, displayed anti-Semitic slogans, and even called for violence against Jewish students. This wave of protest activity, some say, has crossed the line from free speech into incitement and threats. Senator Hawley came prepared with some eye-opening details to question the witnesses, particularly targeting those supporting undocumented students on campus. His main concern? Whether students who are undocumented or on visas and participate in violent or threatening protests should remain in the country. Hawley quickly intensified his questioning, bringing up disturbing instances reported in the media, anti-Semitic chants, support for jihadist slogans, and calls for violent action against Jewish students. He then asked bluntly, shouldn't these students be deported if they are in the country unlawfully and threatening the safety of others? Pecco defended his organization's students, asserting they respect the country and contribute positively. But Hawley pushed back, insisting that respect means respecting the law too. In his closing remarks, Hawley highlighted the deeper issue, the need for America to take a moral stand against incitement and violent rhetoric. He emphasized that freedom of speech is a fundamental value, but that it has limits when it comes to inciting harm or making direct threats. His final message was clear: if you're here illegally or on a visa and you're part of violent or hateful actions on campuses, there should be consequences. This was one of the most heated exchanges in recent hearings, and it's sparking some big debates around immigration, student visas, and the limits of free speech. Whether you agree with Senator Hawley's call to deport these students or not, one thing is certain: this conversation is only beginning. Thank you so much for watching. These are complex and sensitive issues, and it's critical to keep discussions open and respectful. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And if you found this breakdown insightful, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to stay updated and don't miss our future deep dives into major political debates. Until next time, take care, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next video.
I, in particular, asked you to give us a full accounting of the public posts that you had made on Twitter. You had locked your Twitter account before you came before this committee. It had previously been public. I asked you to provide the public posts that had previously been available on Twitter because the ones that we have were pretty disturbing. You responded as follows, and I quote, "My personal Twitter account is comprised of posts about my mystery novels, events at the White House Historical Association, Pittsburgh sports teams, travels, and my dog," end quote. Is this an accurate statement?
Yes, Senator.
I just remind you you're under oath. Is this an accurate statement?
Yes, Senator.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your Twitter posts then that I was asking you about. On February 18th, 2022, you posted on Twitter bemoaning the dropping of mask requirements for children, including those under the age of 5. Do you remember that post?
No, Senator. Those tweets were in my personal capacity.
Hey folks, today we dive into another intense moment on Capitol Hill. Senator Hawley didn't hold back during his questioning of Dr. Shogan, the nominee for Archivist of the United States. Dr. Shogan, I want to address an issue we discussed the last time you were here, and I think it's one that gets to the heart of trust, integrity, and transparency. Hawley began.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Shogan, when you were here last year, a number of senators asked you, including me, a series of questions about articles you'd written, public statements you had made on social media that were, I have to say, pretty grossly partisan, and I thought offensive, and you and I went back and forth about it. After that, a number of us asked you questions for the record relating to these statements. I want to follow up on one of them. I, in particular, asked you to give us a full accounting of the public posts that you had made on Twitter. You had locked your Twitter account before you came before this committee. It had previously been public. I asked you to provide the public posts that had previously been available on Twitter because the ones that we have were pretty disturbing. You responded as follows, and I quote, "My personal Twitter account is comprised of posts about my mystery novels, events at the White House Historical Association, Pittsburgh sports teams, travels, and my dog, end quote. Is this an accurate statement?
Yes, Senator.
I just remind you, you're under oath. Is this an accurate statement?
Yes, Senator.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your Twitter posts then that I was asking you about. On February 18th, 2022, you posted on Twitter bemoaning the dropping of mask requirements for children, including those under the age of 5. Do you remember that post?
No, Senator. Those tweets were in my personal capacity.
No. I asked you, would you give all public posts that you had made on Twitter? You said no, effectively, and you said that your Twitter posts consisted of mystery novels, events at the White House Historical Association, Pittsburgh sports teams, travels, and my dog. And you just told me now under oath that you stood by that. So now let's talk about your Twitter posts. On February 18th, 2022, you posted bemoaning the fact that mask requirements for children under the age of 5, one of whom I happen to have, by the way, had been dropped. Is that a post about your dog or sports teams?
My social media is in my personal capacity,
Answer
Senator.
my question, please, because you've testified under oath that you only posted about your dog and sports teams and novels, and you also said you wouldn't give this committee any of your public posts. So, is your post on February 18th, 2022, bemoaning the lifting of mask requirements for children under the age of 5, who I might just ask all of the data has said is extremely harmful to children, these mask requirements? We'll leave that aside for now. Is that a post about your dog or sports teams? Yes or no?
My social media is in my personal capacity, Senator.
Yes or no, Ms. Shogan? You are under oath before this committee, and I have to say, you have placed this issue squarely in record by repeatedly refusing to answer. Yes or no?
My social media is in my personal capacity, Senator.
So you're not answering my question. Let's talk about another post. 26th of May, 2022, you talk about an assault weapons ban. Retweet a post, ban assault weapons now. Say you agree with this idea that you have to be a certain age to buy so-called assault weapons in America. Is that a post about sports teams or your dog or mystery novels?
My social media is in my personal capacity, Senator.
What about the post on January 5th of 2021 in which you say that Ted Cruz ought to stay in his own lane?
He was referring to previous occasions where Dr. Shogan was questioned about her statements, views, and particularly her social media posts. Last time she made some promises that, according to Hawley, didn't quite add up. Hawley called out Shogan's public statements some highly partisan and offensive. He reminded her of her commitment to transparency, especially concerning her Twitter posts that were locked down prior to her last appearance. You made several public statements, Dr. Shogan, some of which were highly partisan and frankly offensive. When we asked you about them, you assured us you'd be transparent. You even told us you would provide a full account of your public Twitter posts, Hawley stated. But instead of transparency, Hawley said he received a response describing her Twitter account as a platform for mystery novels, White House events, Pittsburgh sports teams, and her dog. Is that an accurate reflection of your posts? Hawley demanded. Hawley didn't hold back, accusing Shogan of playing word games and stonewalling under oath. December 10th, you agreed with a post calling former President Trump a weak policy president and hoped he'd be overridden. January 5th, you even speculated he might pardon himself. If you stand by what you say, why not just answer the questions? Why hide? Hawley pressed. Calling for accountability, Hawley made it clear that he opposes Shogan's nomination, urging his colleagues to do the same. Mr. Chairman, Dr. Shogan has repeatedly lied under oath, refused to give us information that's clearly relevant, and continuously dodged my questions. Is this the kind of leadership we want? Someone who thinks they're above transparency, above honesty? For these reasons, I will oppose this nomination, and I strongly urge my colleagues to do the same. That's it for today, folks. If you want to stay informed on what's really happening in government, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Let's continue to hold our leaders accountable together. Thank you for watching.
You know, I have to say, I think one of the worst things that happened in the COVID era is that our own government deliberately withheld information from us, from the American people, tried to propagandize the American people, used the arms and agencies of government to actively censor Americans who dared to question the propaganda, and they're still lying to us. And I'll give you the proof of it. I wrote the bill that requires the administration to declassify the intelligence assessments and reports related to the origins of COVID-19. Now listen, I just want to say, everybody sitting on this dais has read these. I've read them. I guarantee you my colleagues have read them. I know what the Energy Department concluded.
Today we're diving into a Senate hearing that's making waves across the nation. Senator Josh Hawley takes on a prominent doctor over what he calls a propaganda effort against the lab leak theory for COVID-19's origins. This confrontation gets heated, bringing to light government censorship and discredited experts. Stick around, hit that subscribe button, and let's break down this explosive exchange.
You know, I have to say, I think one of the worst things that happened in the COVID era is that our own government deliberately withheld information from us, from the American people, tried to propagandize the American people, used the arms and agencies of government to actively censor Americans who dared to question the propaganda, and they're still lying to us. And I'll give you the proof of it. I wrote the bill that requires the administration to declassify the intelligence assessments and reports related to the origins of COVID-19. Now listen, I just want to say, everybody sitting on this dais has read these. I've read them. I guarantee you my colleagues have read them. I know what the Energy Department concluded. I know what the FBI concluded. I knew what they concluded years ago because we could read them when people like Dr. Fauci were out there saying the lab leak hypothesis was totally discredited and nonsense. You could go read the intelligence and know our own government thought otherwise. And at this late hour, this government still refuses to release the intelligence. They are blatantly disregarding the law that this body passed, the Senate passed, unanimously. The propaganda involved in the origins of COVID-19 is astounding to me. It recalls the worst of the wartime propaganda in years past when the government would deliberately lie to people. And here that's what they have been doing with COVID-19 and are still doing it. You know, you had this whole cabal led by Dr. Fauci and others who, as soon as the lab leak hypothesis that we now know is a lot more than a hypothesis, as soon as it's mentioned, what did Fauci do? We know because this has all been litigated in a federal district court. In fact, in multiple federal courts. I've got the finding of fact from the court right here. They lay it all out. Fauci goes to the WHO, asks the WHO to intervene to discredit the lab leak. He then speaks against it multiple times from the podium at the White House. He then does countless media interviews. I mean, my gosh, what show has he not been on? He's still on TV, spewing this misinformation, as he would call it. But he did these multiple interviews where he says, no way, no how, lab leak not possible at all. And then he coordinates, and the whole federal government coordinates with the biggest tech companies in the world to suppress, and media companies, to suppress any American who would ask questions about it. It's absolutely disgraceful. Dr. Gary, you were part of this propaganda effort. I mean, you were right at the center of it. It's astounding. You wrote this piece, this Nature magazine piece, or whatever it was, that we've heard testimony here today, Nature Medicine, March 17th, 2020. We've heard testimony here today from other scientists on the panel that it's basically an opinion piece. You said at the time that definitively SARS-CoV-2 is not a laboratory construct, Of course, our own government, key agencies have concluded otherwise. And on the basis of this, Dr. Fauci and others cited this piece and went out to use it to mobilize.
Senator Hawley starts off strong. He highlights how, during the pandemic, the government actively censored information and pushed a narrative. He points out that the law he authored, requiring the release of COVID origins intelligence, is still being ignored. This information could have shown a very different picture about where COVID actually came from. Hawley's frustration is clear. Critical details are being withheld from the public. Hawley dives into the central role of Dr. Anthony Fauci, who he says led a group to shut down the lab leak hypothesis. He claims that Fauci worked with global organizations and media to discredit the lab leak idea. Hawley pulls out emails, legal findings, and quotes from Fauci's media appearances. According to him, this effort wasn't about science, it was about steering public opinion. It's absolutely disgraceful, he says, pointing to Fauci's attempts to make any questioning voices seem absurd. He turns to Dr. Gary, a key player who co-authored an early paper on COVID's origins, claiming the virus couldn't be lab-made. But according to Hawley, it was just an opinion piece used as a tool for censorship. People were fired, banned from social media, and ostracized for questioning it. Hawley confronts Dr. Gary with his own emails, where he admitted he couldn't see a natural explanation for COVID's origins. But somehow, the lab leak theory was dismissed anyway. Hawley's demand is clear. Do you regret being part of this propaganda effort? As the heated exchange draws to a close, Hawley sums up his outrage. He accuses Dr. Gary of participating in one of the worst propaganda chapters in this country's history. His stance is powerful. It is wrong to censor and lie to the American public, and you should have done better. Dr. Gary insists he had no control over how his work was used. The exchange leaves viewers with tough questions. How much did officials know, and why was this information withheld? Whether you're on Senator Hawley's side or not, this hearing raises serious concerns. Government transparency, freedom of information, and the public's right to know the truth about the pandemic are issues that affect us all. What do you think? Was this an attempt to hide the truth, or just a scientific process gone wrong? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.
If we could. Let's start with some of your work during COVID. Case you list here, Capitol Hill Baptist Church versus Bowser. Do you remember that case?
Yes, Senator.
You remember working on that case?
Yes, Senator.
This was a case involving the district's lockdown policies that shut down churches in the district. Is that correct?
It concerned litigation over provision of the lockdown policies. The policies restricted all types of activity in the district.
All types of activity in the district?
Yes, Senator.
Did it restrict mass protests in the district?
Well, it restricted activities that one normally expected, including work, going to stores. It also did include these provisions that were challenged concerning churches.
So it exempted unusual or unlikely activities that's in the statute, that's in the ordinance?
When the mayor was enacting these orders at the outset of the pandemic, I think she was trying to be as comprehensive as she could.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into a powerful moment from the Senate floor where Senator Josh Hawley grills a judicial nominee over key religious liberty issues. This wasn't your typical back and forth. It was a full-on examination of constitutional rights and how they intersect with pandemic policies. Senator Hawley demands answers on why churches were locked down while other gatherings were permitted.
Hawley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all of the nominees. Judge Ali Khan, I think the last time you and I visited, it was before the Homeland Security Committee. And I asked you a number of questions there, you, including some for the record, you answered those, which I appreciated. One question that I ask you, and I ask every nominee actually on that committee and this one, is whether or not the nominee has ever litigated against a religious liberty claim. Usually the answer to that's no. In your case, you answered yes, and you listed 5 different cases over a period of years, actually, in which you have litigated against individuals or churches' religious liberty claims. So let's just talk about a few of those, if we could. Let's start with some of your work during COVID. Case you list here, Capitol Hill Baptist Church versus Bowser. Do you remember that case?
Yes, Senator.
You remember working on that case?
Yes, Senator.
This was a case involving the district's lockdown policies that shut down churches in the district. Is that correct?
It concerned litigation over provision of the lockdown policies. The policies restricted all types of activity in the district.
All types of activity in the district?
Yes, Senator.
Did it restrict mass protests in the district?
Well, it restricted activities that one normally expected, including work, going to stores. It also did include these provisions that were challenged concerning churches.
So it exempted unusual or unlikely activities that's in the statute, that's in the ordinance?
When the mayor was enacting these orders at the outset of the pandemic, I think she was trying to be as comprehensive as she could, and the order did restrict a number of daily activities of district residents.
But it exempted mass protests?
I don't believe it said anything one way or another.
Can you point me to the text where it exempted mass protests?
I don't believe it said anything one way or another.
Of course it didn't, because it didn't exempt mass protests, right? You know that.
I think it was silent on the issue because I don't believe it was contemplated by the mayor's office.
Ah, so you think that mass protests should be in a different category than religious observances? Is that your position?
I think if there were protests on the book, then the mayor might have thought about that when she was enacting the COVID-19 restrictions. But I think she was trying to protect public health.
So you think it's fine to say to religious people that they are prohibited from gathering outside, wearing a mask, socially distance. They can't do it. But if you want to come and protest, defund the police, if you want to support that, that's fine. You can gather en masse, person to person, close up, thousands of people. That's okay. That discrimination's okay. That is your position?
Senator, that is not my position.
It was your position. It's what you argued.
I did not write these orders. What I said.
You defended it in court. And you just articulated to me what I take to be your position.
What I was doing in the Capitol Hill Baptist Church was defending the mayor, my client, against a constitutional challenge to one aspect of the COVID-19 restrictions. We understood that strict.
Let's break down the conversation, the arguments, and what this could mean for our First Amendment rights. During the COVID-19 pandemic, several cities issued lockdown orders to protect public health. These policies often included restrictions on religious gatherings, but there was controversy when mass protests, like those supporting social justice causes, were allowed to continue without restrictions. This created a serious question: were churches being unfairly targeted, and were First Amendment rights being compromised under the guise of public health? As he asks, did you really think it was okay to let protests go on but ban church gatherings? Hawley is setting the stage for what he believes is an unconstitutional double standard. Why did you argue that religious gatherings posed more of a risk than protests? Why did you persist in defending discrimination on religious grounds? Hawley's disappointment is clear. He's disturbed by the arguments made to uphold policies that he sees as selectively restricting religious freedoms. Judge Alicon tries to defend her position, stating that she was representing her client, the mayor, and following the advice of public health officials. She explains that singing in close gatherings could increase transmission risk. However, Hawley remains unsatisfied, pointing out the lack of scientific evidence and calling it a discriminatory policy without foundation. This back and forth really highlights the tension between following public health advice and protecting individual rights. In the end, Senator Hawley makes it clear he won't support Judge Alicon's nomination. This hearing isn't just about one case, it's a reflection of a larger debate about the balance between public health measures and constitutional freedoms. It raises crucial questions about how we navigate our rights during emergencies. Let me know in the comments where you stand on this. Should churches have been treated the same as protests during the lockdowns? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into moments like this one. See you in the next video.
This is the case where Neil Stewart tried to cross state lines to rape another person's 9-year-old daughter. He had 6,700 images and videos of egregious and brutal child pornography. The government recommended 97 months. The guidelines said 97 to 121 months. You came in at 57 months. Senator Cruz asked you why. The chairman wouldn't let you answer. I thought maybe you'd like to answer now.
Thank you, Senator. No one case can stand in for a judge's entire record. I have sentenced more than 100 people in a variety of egregious circumstances. In every case, and especially cases that involve the kinds of acts that you're talking about, the kinds of evidence that I had to deal with as a judge, in every case, I am balancing the factors that Congress has determined are appropriate and required for a judge to make a determination. The data points that Senator Cruz pointed to that you may have in front of you don't account for all of the information that was before me as a judge and the authority that you all, Congress, and your prior confirmation when I was a district judge provided for me to exercise my judgment, and I treated those cases and every case very seriously and imposed a sentence that was sufficient but not greater than necessary to promote the purposes of punishment.
In a recent Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, things got intense when Senator Josh Hawley went head-to-head with Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson over sentencing in child pornography cases. Senator Hawley had serious concerns about Judge Jackson's past rulings. He highlighted a particular case, United States v. Stewart, involving a man with thousands of child abuse images and videos. The government recommended a 97-month sentence, but Judge Jackson handed down only 57 months.
This is the case where Neil Stewart tried to cross state lines to rape another person's 9-year-old daughter. He had 6,700 images and videos of egregious and brutal child pornography. The government recommended 97 months. The guidelines said 97 to 121 months. You came in at 57 months. Senator Cruz asked you why. The chairman wouldn't let you answer. I thought maybe you'd like to answer now.
Thank you, Senator. No one case can stand in for a judge's entire record. I have sentenced more than 100 people in a variety of egregious circumstances. In every case, and especially cases that involve the kinds of acts that you're talking about, the kinds of evidence that I had to deal with as a judge, in every case, I am balancing the factors that Congress has determined are appropriate and required for a judge to make a determination. The data points that Senator Cruz pointed to that you may have in front of you don't account for all of the information that was before me as a judge and the authority that you all, Congress, and your prior confirmation when I was a district judge provided for me to exercise my judgment, and I treated those cases and every case very seriously and imposed a sentence that was sufficient but not greater than necessary to promote the purposes of punishment.
Would it surprise you to learn that Mr. Stewart's a recidivist? He was warrants issued again for his arrest just 3 years after you sentenced him?
Would it surprise me?
Yeah, would it surprise you?
You know, Senator, there is data in the Sentencing Commission and elsewhere that indicates that there are recidivism, serious recidivism issues. And so among the various people that I've sentenced, I'm not surprised that there are people who reoffend, and it is a terrible thing that happens in our system.
Yeah, indeed it is. Let me ask you about the Hawkins case. You and I talked about this yesterday. You've been able to think about it overnight. This is a case where you had an 18-year-old who possessed and distributed hundreds of images of 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds, and you gave him, frankly, a slap on the wrist sentence of 3 months.
Senator,
Do you regret it?
I don't remember whether it was distribution or possession in
It was
the law.
both. Do you regret it?
In the law, there are different crimes that people commit
Judge,
in
you gave
this
him 3
area.
months. My question is, do you regret it or not?
Senator, what I regret is that in a hearing about my qualifications to be a justice on the Supreme Court, we've spent a lot of time focusing on this small subset of my sentences, and I've tried to explain.
You regret that
many
we're focusing on
times-
your cases? I don't understand.
No. I'm talking about the fact that you're talking about
Child pornography
7
cases?
very serious cases.
I'm glad we agree on that. Don't you think we should be focusing on that?
Some of which involve conduct that I sentence people to 25, 30 years.
3 months
for-
in this case, Judge. Do you regret it? You haven't answered my question yet. Do you
Senator-
regret this sentence?
Senator, I would have to look at the circumstances. What I'm telling you,
You know the circumstances. We discussed it for half an hour yesterday. There's a 55-page transcript, which I'm sure you've read. You
I
lived
did not-
it.
I
As
did
you've
not-
emphasized to this committee over and over, you've lived it, right? You said that you've been through all of this. You've looked at all of the images. You're the one who's had to endure all of it. You gave him a 3-month sentence. I just wonder if you regret it or if you stand by it. I mean, do you stand by that sentence?
Senator, in every case, I followed what Congress authorized me to do in looking to the best of my ability at all of the various factors that apply, that constrain judges, that give us discretion, but also tell us how to sentence. And I ruled in every case based on all of the relevant factors.
So you don't regret it?
No one case, Senator, can stand in for a judge's
I'm not asking you that.
entire
I'm asking you
record.
if you regret this sentence and
Hawley didn't hold back, questioning why such a light sentence was given, especially since the offender reoffended within a few years. He argued that stricter penalties might prevent future crimes. Judge Jackson, however, stood firm, explaining that sentencing is complex and involves many unseen factors. The debate heated up further over another case known as the Hawkins case, where an 18-year-old possessing hundreds of child abuse images received just 3 months in prison, despite a recommendation of 18 months probation. Senator Hawley pressed Judge Jackson on whether her decisions were based on personal views or strict legal guidelines. He emphasized that sentencing guidelines should ensure that punishments fit the crime, especially when it involves severe harm to children. Judge Jackson clarified that she respects the law and that her discretion is within the guidelines set by Congress. However, Hawley maintained that strict guidelines are necessary to protect vulnerable children from exploitation. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. You'll get updates on key judicial and legislative issues. This hearing underscores a significant clash in judicial philosophy and the responsibility judges have in handling complex cases. Should judges have the flexibility to adapt sentences based on context, or should there be stricter, uniform guidelines to avoid leniency in cases of child exploitation? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth analysis of the issues that matter most. See you in the next video.
Ms. Pappas, let me start with you. I have to say it's great to see you here today. I have repeatedly invited your company to testify before Congress. I invited them to testify to the Judiciary Subcommittee on Crime and Terrorism in November of 2019. I invited them to testify again in September of the following year. Both times we were stiffed. TikTok told me that they would set up a meeting with the CEO. They didn't want to testify in public, but they set up a meeting with the CEO after November 2019. They then canceled that meeting. So it's nice to see TikTok being willing to answer questions in public. It's a pleasant change. Let's dig into a few things if we could, specifically about TikTok's links to the Chinese Communist Party. In response to a letter from some of my colleagues, TikTok claimed earlier this year that the company has never shared data, never, with the Chinese government. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And has never shared data with the Chinese Communist Party. Is that correct?
We will never share data, period.
Hey everyone! Today we're diving into one of the most heated confrontations on Capitol Hill, Senator Josh Hawley's grilling of TikTok executives. If you thought this was just another routine hearing, you're in for a surprise. Hawley pulled no punches, questioning TikTok's ties to China and demanding clear answers on data security. He revealed that he had repeatedly invited TikTok to testify before Congress on data security and ties to the Chinese government since 2019. Despite multiple invitations, TikTok dodged public hearings each time. Hawley calls this change of heart to testify a pleasant surprise.
Senator Hawley, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all the witnesses for being here. Ms. Pappas, let me start with you. I have to say it's great to see you here today. I have repeatedly invited your company to testify before Congress. I invited them to testify to the Judiciary Subcommittee on Crime and Terrorism in November of 2019. I invited them to testify again in September of the following year. Both times we were stiffed. TikTok told me that they would set up a meeting with the CEO. They didn't want to testify in public, but they set up a meeting with the CEO after November 2019. They then canceled that meeting. So it's nice to see TikTok being willing to answer questions in public. It's a pleasant change. Let's dig into a few things if we could, specifically about TikTok's links to the Chinese Communist Party. In response to a letter from some of my colleagues, TikTok claimed earlier this year that the company has never shared data, never, with the Chinese government. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And has never shared data with the Chinese Communist Party. Is that correct?
We will never share data, period.
My question was in the past tense. Has TikTok ever shared data with the Chinese Communist Party?
We have never shared data with the Chinese government, correct?
With the Chinese Communist Party?
Yes, correct.
Do you have any, have you ever shared it with members, two members of the Chinese Communist Party?
We have said many times, Senator, that we do have Chinese engineers based in China. I don't think there's any platform up here that would be able to speak to what you're talking about as it relates to the political affiliation of an individual. But I'm happy to assure you that we are ensuring the access controls around our data as well as the storage of that data in the United States.
So I think you're telling me that there are TikTok employees or ByteDance employees who are members of the Chinese Communist Party? Is that what I take?
No, I'm saying I wouldn't be able to verify that.
Oh, well, let me just ask you that affirmatively. Are there TikTok employees or ByteDance employees who are members of the Chinese Communist Party?
Senator, I'm saying nobody that's sitting on this panel could tell you a political
I'm not interested
affiliation
about
of
anybody's opinion.
any
I'm asking you a
individual.
factual question. Are there members of the Chinese Communist Party employed by TikTok and ByteDance? Yes or no?
I wouldn't be able to tell you the political
You don't know?
affiliation of any individual. What I can tell you is how much we're
I
investing
know membership in the Communist Chinese
access
Party is not
as
exactly
well
like
as
membership in the Democrat Party. So
controls.
I'm looking for an answer. You tell me you don't know? TikTok doesn't know.
Here's what I can tell you. I can tell you that our U.S. and Singapore leadership, there are no CCP members. I can tell you.
So you
that
do know that, but you're telling me that you don't know if there are any members who are employed by TikTok or ByteDance, members of the Chinese Communist Party?
Senator, I'm happy to share that we are putting access controls.
That's not my question. My question is, that's not my question. My question is, are there any TikTok employees or ByteDance members, members of the Chinese Communist Party? Yes or no?
Senator, I'm saying nobody could sit up here and give you that
So you don't
answer.
know? You're saying you don't know. You do know your leadership isn't, but you don't know about your employees. Is that your testimony?
I know that everyone who makes a strategic decision at this platform is not a member of the CCP.
A strategic decision. Okay. It's interesting. It's interesting to me that you're quite confident that anyone who can make a strategic decision, how many people is that?
But it's clear the senator doesn't appreciate the runaround TikTok gave him for years. He wastes no time getting to the core of the issue. What does TikTok have to hide? Hawley asks TikTok's representatives point blank if they've ever shared user data with the Chinese government. TikTok claims they never have and never will. Hawley's follow-up? A direct question on the Chinese Communist Party. TikTok's executives deny direct data sharing with the CCP but seem evasive about individual employees' affiliations. Despite Hawley's attempts to get a straight answer on whether any TikTok or ByteDance employees are CCP members, TikTok's executives continuously sidestep the question. He questions how TikTok can be so certain about top executives, but can't answer if their other employees have CCP affiliations. Hawley brings up leaked reports from BuzzFeed and Forbes, suggesting that over 300 ByteDance employees are linked to Chinese state media, or CCP. Some even had direct access to U.S. user data dubbed Master Admin Access. TikTok's response? They deny these specific claims and say their data is securely stored with access control measures. His concern? If employees with CCP ties have access to U.S. user data, it poses a significant national security risk. Quick reminder, if you're interested in keeping up with critical stories like this, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Senator Hawley tries one more time to get a straight answer on whether CCP members have access to U.S. user data. Once again, TikTok's representatives give vague responses about their strictest controls and U.S.-led security team. Hawley pushes back, calling TikTok a walking security nightmare for American users. The hearing concludes without the answers he was looking for. For Senator Hawley, TikTok's lack of transparency is a red flag, suggesting they have a lot more to hide than they're letting on. So, what's the takeaway? For Senator Hawley, the stakes are high. His concerns aren't just about privacy, it's about potential risks to national security. TikTok's lack of transparency has left more questions than answers, and it's clear this debate isn't going away. Let us know in the comments. Do you think TikTok should be more transparent about their affiliations and data policies? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned as I continue to bring you the latest on this developing story. Thanks for watching.
Ms. Gaines, I want to start with you. Thank you for your courage in being here today. Thank you for your courage and advocacy for women. You have been subjected to an unbelievable amount of abuse. You talk about intimidation, threats of violence. You have suffered it. I want to put up here a picture so everybody can see it. This was the welcome you were treated to at San Francisco State University just a couple of months ago when a mob assembled where you were supposed to speak, I believe for over 3 hours, screamed, threatened you, barricaded you in a room. Do I have that basically correct?
Yes, I was held for ransom for 3.5 hours by hundreds of these protesters, as you see on the board. They demanded that I had to pay them money if I wanted to make it home to see my family safe again.
Today, we're diving into a raw and emotional exchange on Capitol Hill. Former NCAA swimmer Riley Gaines went head-to-head with Senator Josh Hawley to expose the deep struggles and harassment she faced when competing against a transgender athlete. Senator Hawley opened by acknowledging Riley's courage and dedication.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to the witnesses for being here. Ms. Gaines, I want to start with you. Thank you for your courage in being here today. Thank you for your courage and advocacy for women. You have been subjected to an unbelievable amount of abuse. You talk about intimidation, threats of violence. You have suffered it. I want to put up here a picture so everybody can see it. This was the welcome you were treated to at San Francisco State University just a couple of months ago when a mob assembled where you were supposed to speak, I believe for over 3 hours, screamed, threatened you, barricaded you in a room. Do I have that basically correct?
Yes, I was held for ransom for 3.5 hours by hundreds of these protesters, as you see on the board. They demanded that I had to pay them money if I wanted to make it home to see my family safe again. The law enforcement in San Francisco, I respect, and I think law enforcement is what's brave, not me, and I respect all law enforcement, but the law enforcement I was met with in San Francisco, in my opinion, failed miserably in effectively doing their job. They had mentioned that it was not ideal for them to be seen as anything other than an ally to this community, and that was made very obvious in the treatment and effectiveness of removing me safely from that situation.
Why were you threatened and barricaded into a room and held for ransom for hours on end? I mean, what was it you were saying that was so terrible?
I was invited to speak on my experience of my senior year in competing against a male. Nothing opinionated about what I shared. It was sheerly the exact lived experience of what me and my teammates and fellow competitors dealt with. And so I spoke. After my speech, there was, of course, a lot of protesters in the room, which I'm totally fine with people protesting. It's their right to protest. But what I'm not fine with is when it does turn violent in the way that it did. Because protesters afterwards, they rushed into the room, they turned off the lights, they rushed to the front. Myself and others were assaulted, and that's ultimately when I was held for hostage for 3.5 hours.
It's just unbelievable, unbelievable. Thank you for your courage in the midst of that. Let's talk a little bit about the message that you were sharing, and you started to talk about it in your opening statement. Just tell us about your experience, because nobody can question your experience. I don't think anybody sitting at the table, and certainly nobody at this podium, has had the experience that you have had. You were talking about just the incredible surprise, shall I say, to put it gently, of finding a biological man, a 6'4" biological man in your locker room and having to accept that without being asked about it, without being told about it even. What was that like for you? Tell us about that.
Again, we only became aware we would be undressing next to a man was when we had to see a man undressing while we were simultaneously undressing. And so I immediately left the locker room and I went up to one of the officials on the pool deck and I said, what are the guidelines to allow a man into our locker room? I know the guidelines for the competition, but what are the guidelines for the locker room? And he so nonchalantly said back, oh, we actually got around this by making locker rooms unisex. And so I'm thinking to myself in these brief moments, first and foremost, you just admitted this is a male by acknowledging how you had to change your rules to make the locker rooms unisex. You acknowledge that we do not share the same sex, first and foremost. Secondly, unisex?
For her, this wasn't just recounting an experience, it was about standing up for women who feel forced into silence. Riley shared a harrowing incident at San Francisco State University where protesters barricaded her in a room, screaming, threatening, and even demanding ransom to let her go. She was stuck in that room for hours, surrounded by people who sought to intimidate her into submission. Law enforcement stood by, hesitant to be anything but allies to the crowd, but the harassment didn't stop there. Riley described the shock of competing against a biological male, a 6'4" athlete whose presence was never communicated to her or her teammates in advance. In one unforgettable moment, she walked into her locker room and saw him undressing beside her. Startled, she confronted an official, only to be told the space was made unisex. This wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a clear violation of privacy and a dismissal of Riley's rights as a female athlete. Senator Hawley highlighted another unsettling reality. Riley and her teammates were instructed to remain silent about the situation. Schools, coaches, and even the NCAA warned athletes not to discuss the challenges they faced. Riley explained how this forced silence made her feel erased. Senator Hawley ended by giving Riley a chance to respond to a recent statement by transgender swimmer Leah Thomas, who accused Riley of using the guise of feminism to mask transphobic beliefs. Riley passionately defended feminism's original intent, to honor and uplift women based on their unique strengths and capabilities. She stated that redefining feminism to silence women was ironically a form of mansplaining. Riley Gaines' powerful testimony sheds light on the challenges female athletes are facing in today's rapidly changing sports landscape. The threats, intimidation, and forced silence reveal a system that isn't just allowing but enforcing inequality. Riley's courage and resilience remind us of the importance of standing up for what's right, even when the world tries to silence us. So, what do you think? Are women's sports and spaces being protected, or are these voices of concern being stifled? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.
Today on this important topic, Dr. Doshi, if I could just start with you. Since 2008, the McKinsey company has done nearly $1 billion in consulting work for the United States government. $1 billion. And its top client has been the Defense Department. In fact, it's got contracts with the Defense Department, with the U.S. Department of the Navy, with the Homeland Security Department, with Customs and Border Patrol. I think in 2021 alone, McKinsey had Defense Department or other security agency contracts worth $850 million. It's absolutely extraordinary. And yet, at the same time, they're also doing business with the Chinese government. They are simultaneously taking $1 billion from the United States and its security agencies and also getting money from not just China in general, from the Chinese government and Chinese-controlled entities. Explain to us why that is a problem. I think any normal American who's sitting out there and hears that would be absolutely outraged by it, and rightly so. Why are they getting taxpayer money advising our military and simultaneously advising the Chinese military? But just explain to us, why is this a national security concern?
Hey everyone, today we're diving deep into a heated Senate hearing where Senator Josh Hawley took on a witness over what he calls absurd national security threats. This story starts with McKinsey & Company, a global consulting powerhouse. Since 2008, they've worked on almost $1 billion worth of U.S. government contracts. Most of these are defense contracts with high-stakes agencies like the Department of Defense and Homeland Security. But here's the kicker. McKinsey is also consulting for the Chinese government, including projects tied to the Chinese military.
Today on this important topic, Dr. Doshi, if I could just start with you. Since 2008, the McKinsey company has done nearly $1 billion in consulting work for the United States government. $1 billion. And its top client has been the Defense Department. In fact, it's got contracts with the Defense Department, with the U.S. Department of the Navy, with the Homeland Security Department, with Customs and Border Patrol. I think in 2021 alone, McKinsey had Defense Department or other security agency contracts worth $850 million. It's absolutely extraordinary. And yet, at the same time, they're also doing business with the Chinese government. They are simultaneously taking $1 billion from the United States and its security agencies and also getting money from not just China in general, from the Chinese government and Chinese-controlled entities. Explain to us why that is a problem. I think any normal American who's sitting out there and hears that would be absolutely outraged by it, and rightly so. Why are they getting taxpayer money advising our military and simultaneously advising the Chinese military? But just explain to us, why is this a national security concern?
Well, thank you, Senator Hawley. I agree this is a national security concern. I would go further. I mean, the nature of the work that McKinsey did reportedly involved helping China consider how to outcompete U.S. technology firms, how to strengthen Made in China 2025. The goal was to help them advance their goals for technological dominance. And that is directly at odds with the interests not just of the U.S. government, but also of the corporate clients they had in the United States that they were also advising. So there's a clear conflict of interest there. And it's also, the kind of conflict of interest that even if McKinsey had exercised better judgment about the projects it took on, other firms doing business in China are getting raided by the Chinese government. Oftentimes, that means that their data is no longer secure. And if they have U.S. client data on those servers, well, that's now Chinese data. So there's a lot of concerns, I think, that we can raise here. One is the nature of the work. Another is being a vector for the transfer of information and data. And there's a third concern, too, which is that some of these firms have mutually irreconcilable obligations to the United States and to China. China's basically saying, if you want to comply with the subpoena from this committee, you can't, because we have a data security law saying you can. That's three different kinds of conflicts beyond the one, Senator, that you just identified.
Well, that's terrific. As we think about the different things that McKinsey has advised China on, they are, for example, a major proponent and promoter of China's Belt and Road Initiative. So here they are, again, taking $1 billion in contracts from the United States military, simultaneously advising China on their Belt and Road Initiative, which is meant to undermine our military and also to undermine American companies all across the world. McKinsey has advised 9 of the top 15 Chinese contractors for the Belt and Road Initiative as of 2018. I mean, it's shameless when you think about it. It is absolutely shameless. You know, interestingly, I recently obtained a document related to a contract, just to give one example, involving semiconductors. So semiconductors, McKinsey.
For Senator Hawley and probably many Americans, this sounds not just controversial, but downright dangerous. Hawley lays it out. While McKinsey advises the U.S. on national security, they're also helping China's government with its technological ambitions. These ambitions directly clash with American interests. He challenges the witness, Dr. Doi, to explain how any American taxpayer could feel comfortable knowing their money is funding a firm that serves both U.S. and Chinese interests simultaneously. He calls this dual allegiance absolutely absurd. Senator Hawley raises serious concerns about information flow. McKinsey's role in advising the U.S. military means they potentially handle sensitive data that, in a worst-case scenario, could be exposed to their other client, the Chinese government. The witness responds by outlining risks like data security breaches and conflicts of interest, especially with Chinese entities known for prioritizing data access. But Hawley isn't satisfied. He calls McKinsey's simultaneous consulting for both governments shameless, arguing that it endangers American security and the success of American companies worldwide. One of the most intense moments comes when another witness tries to downplay McKinsey's actions by comparing them to American soybean farmers who trade with China. Hawley retorts that there's a world of difference between selling soybeans and advising China's military, calling it the most absurd instance of whataboutism. This Senate hearing underscored a high-stakes issue in American politics and national security. Should companies that serve U.S. security interests be allowed to work with foreign governments that pose potential threats? Hawley's argument is clear. Not only is this a conflict of interest, but it's also a direct risk to American security. As lawmakers continue to grapple with these issues, the outcome of this debate will shape the future of U.S. defense policy and corporate accountability. If you're concerned about issues like these and want more coverage on high-stakes moments in politics, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the conversation. Let us know in the comments. Do you agree with Senator Hawley? Thanks for watching.